เมื่อสักครู่นี้ผมเรียนเชิญท่านหนึ่งขึ้นมาครับท่านนี้หลายคนบอกว่าเอ๊ะชื่อคุ้นมากพูดถึงเทรนด์ครับในเรื่องของเทคโนโลยีต่างๆรวมไปถึงเทรนด์ด้านการตลาดจริงๆแล้วบุคคลคนนี้ถือได้ว่าถ้าอยู่ต่างประเทศนะครับใครจะไปเข้าฟังการสัมมนาของเขาเนี่ยนะครับจะต้องจ่ายค่าเข้าฟังสูงถึง 2-300 เหรียญนะครับแต่วันนี้ครับทาง TrueBusiness เราเชิญมาให้ทุกท่านได้มาติดตามฟังกันครับที่เกริ่นเอาไว้ตอนต้นที่บอกว่าวันนี้เราจะนำเสนอเรื่องของเทรนด์นั่นก็คือเทรนด์ในทศวรรษครับบุคคลท่านนี้ครับท่านเป็นนะครับตัวแทนนะครับจากบริษัทที่ให้คำปรึกษาด้านเทคโนโลยีสารสนเทศและการสื่อสารชั้นนำของโลกครับนั่นก็คือ Gartner นั่นเองแหละครับซึ่งทุกๆปีทุกๆ5 ปีจะมีคนลงทะเบียนกันเพื่อเข้าไปรับการฟังกันครับว่าการตลาดในอนาคตพวกดิจิทัลทั้งหลายจะเข้ามามีส่วนร่วมได้อย่างไรนะครับซึ่งแน่นอนครับว่าเราจะมาจับกระแสแนวโน้ม IT โลก 2015 สู่ทศวรรษหน้านี้ด้วยกันนะครับในหัวข้อ Global IT Megatrend in 2015 and Beyond นั่นเองนะครับท่านผู้นี้ครับประสบการณ์ในการทำธุรกิจนะครับหรือว่าการให้คำปรึกษานั้นมากถึง 25 ปีครับในด้านต่างๆมากมายครับไม่ใช่แค่เฉพาะนะครับต่างประเทศนะครับที่หลายคนบอกประเทศไหนกันบ้างมีทั้งออสเตรเลียนะครับอังกฤษนะครับแล้วก็อีกหลายประเทศในแถบเอเชียแปซิฟิกนั่นเองนะครับท่านให้คำแนะนำครับแล้วก็ดูแลกำกับด้าน IT โดยเฉพาะครับและเป็นผู้นำการให้บริการนวัตกรรมหรือว่า innovation สถาปัตยกรรมองค์กรเพื่อการพัฒนาทั้งในแง่ของการขับเคลื่อนธุรกิจรวมไปถึงการพัฒนากลยุทธ์ขององค์กรนะครับรวมไปถึงร่วมในการวางแผนการวางกลยุทธ์ต่างๆด้านเศรษฐกิจนั่นเองนะครับท่านผู้นี้ครับจบการศึกษาปริญญาโท MBA สาขาการจัดการเทคโนโลยีจาก Deakin University ออสเตรเลียครับวิทยาศาสตร์มหาบัณฑิตสาขาการจัดการสิ่งแวดล้อมจาก Griffin University ออสเตรเลียครับรวมไปถึงปริญญาตรีวิศวกรรมศาสตร์สาขาโยธานะครับจาก Queensland ประเทศออสเตรเลียนั่นเองนะครับวันนี้ครับผมมีโอกาสในการมาร่วมเป็นส่วนหนึ่งด้วยดีใจจริงๆครับและเดี๋ยวต้องขอรับฟังไปพร้อมๆกับพวกเราทุกท่านกันด้วยครับ May I invite Mr. Jonathan Krause on stage please
Sawadee krap. Pasatai nitnoi, so I'm very sorry you have to put up with my Australian accent and my English presentation. But it is a pleasure to be here today at this True Business Forum. Great to see so many people in the audience. So my name is John Krause and I'm with Gartner based in Singapore. And it's my privilege to work with senior executives across the ASEAN region around strategy, technology, digital strategy, innovation, and leadership in this incredibly interesting and complex world. If you're not familiar with Gartner, we're basically the leading independent research and advisory firm globally. And our advice is independent, which means we're not tied to any products and services. We don't sell technology or services per se. So we give you an objective opinion around what we see in terms of trends, the relative strengths of different solutions, how to negotiate with vendors, and best practices in implementing technology. And it's advisory because we don't come on site to consult. We just give you advice and coaching that helps you build capability. But enough about me. We're here to talk about the future. William Gibson said that the future is already here. It's not very evenly distributed. Now, my time today is very short, so talking about some of the global trends in roughly half an hour is a big challenge. To do that, I'm going to take a fairly high-level approach. I'm going to talk about some of the big picture trends that we see, give you some examples of some of this, where it's unevenly distributed, and then talk a little bit around what does that mean for you in your organization, particularly those of you who are involved in technology, either within an IT department or trying to use technology to innovate your business. But it will be high level. When I flew in last night from Singapore, it was a beautiful, clear night. And I could see the lights of Pattaya and Rayong. I could see Thai oil refinery. I could see the fishing boats. but I couldn't see the tuk-tuks and the smiling faces of the Thai people until I landed. Right? So I'll be at that high-level view today for you. Let me start with a few quick examples. Is anybody wearing a Fitbit, Nike Fuel Band, Jawbone Up, some other activity tracker? I can see a few hands in the darkness. I'm sure you've all heard about these, even if you're not wearing one yourself. I wore one of these, a Fitbit and various other ones last year, and it was great. I lost about 7 kilos. And since I stopped wearing it a couple of months ago, I put on 2 kilos. Just because it made me aware of being active. I'm not a real gym guy, as you can tell, but it just made me aware, am I walking, am I being active, and am I thinking about my health and activity? Now, these will increasingly connect to your iPhone, and you can track all sorts of detail. Insurance companies, health insurance companies in the US are starting to offer people a discount if they share their information about their lifestyle and their health and their exercise. Right? So it can be a very simple thing, or it can start to connect to new business models. Anybody have young children? When I was a dad, my boys, teenage, 18 and 16, when they were young and in nappies and diapers, we didn't have this. But in South America, Huggies has this gadget called a tweet pea. And you can attach this little sensor on the front of the nappy, and it will send you a text message, basically, to let you know when your child needs changing. That might be a very simple, a very trivial thing, but it's just a very small example of this idea of sensors everywhere. My colleague talked about the fact that maybe, those of us who are getting a bit older, thinking about retirement, or maybe for our parents, as we get old and elderly, one of the unfortunate things is sometimes incontinence. So for elder care, maybe this is important. When I was a father, I knew my baby needed changing because they smelt a little bit or they started crying. But this allows me to intervene much sooner. Simple example, but it's just an idea of applying a sensor and adding value to a product. A more mainstream example is Volvo cars. Volvo has a vision of the connected car. Now, Volvo is not alone in this. Nissan, Toyota, Ford, General Motors, BMW, everybody is basically working on a connected car. Volvo wants to be one of the leaders. Ford have said they believe in the connected car too, and they are working on it, and they'll have products in a few years, but they've deliberately chosen not to be the first. They want people like Volvo to break the ice, to spend money on R&D and innovation. So you can choose how you want to play in this game. Volvo has this idea of a connected car. It's not just navigation and safety and entertainment, those sorts of things we start to take for granted. One of their ideas that they're piloting in Sweden at the moment, if I have a connected car, I've left my smartphone, but I can use my smartphone to unlock the car with a digital key. Why can't I extend that and say, well, maybe my car, I could lend that digital key to someone else. If I do online shopping and I'm not at home for the delivery, maybe they can deliver to my car. Tesco Lotus, get a one-time password to my car. They can open the trunk of my car and put my groceries. Then when I go home, the shopping is already there. Maybe not good for ice cream, okay? But for some things it will be useful. Now this is a pilot in Sweden. It may be useful, it may not be useful. But it's an example of a company stretching the boundaries about what is a car. Is it just a means of transport, or can it also be an online shopping delivery platform? Sticking with the cars, a public sector example. As I drive my Volvo to work, if I live in the city of Boston and I download this app called Street Bump, I turn on the app, I register with the city, and as I drive along and I hit a pothole, the phone registers the bump. It knows where I am because it's got GPS, and it sends a message to the city. Now, if I'm just one person that hits a bump, maybe I ran over a cat. Sorry, cat lovers. But if they're getting maybe 100 bumps or 1,000 bumps in one place, they know to send the repair truck and fix the pothole. They haven't had to invest in sensors themselves. They're using the sensors built into the citizen smartphone. The sensors, the accelerometer, the GPS, they're engaging the citizens in helping improve the service. So a citizen public sector example. A lot of the examples are more kind of consumer-oriented. But here's a company that's a well-established industrial company, SKF. Famous, it's more than 100 years old, famous for the high-quality ball bearings. If you're a mechanic or you're industrial equipment, you probably know about SKF. Their challenge is they had some of the best quality ball bearings in the world, but ball bearings are a commodity. Nobody buys a Gucci or a Prada or a Louis Vuitton ball bearing. So how do you differentiate? How do you add value? And what they've done actually over a number of decades is they've evolved by putting sensors on those ball bearings to detect vibration, detect temperature. And now, instead of making money selling ball bearings, they make their money selling asset monitoring services. They happen to sell the ball bearings as part of that service, but their money, they get paid on machine uptime. And they have big data. They have lots of data captured over many decades about what causes machine failures. What are the early warning signs when we can come in and make a very simple repair before it becomes an expensive failure? So this is an industrial conglomerate that has become an information services company rather than a traditional manufacturer. Back to the consumer space, I'm sure many of you have heard of Google. There was an ad for Grab Taxi, so apologies to Grab Taxi, Grab Car. Similar business model. Wasn't possible a few years ago, but there's a new possibility now about how do we engage with services and locate, transport that we need. Bitcoin, virtual currencies. Kickstarter for funding, peer lending and funding. And Vessel is one you may not have heard of. Vessel is basically a smart cup. So it will tell you how much you're drinking. If you have your Nike Fuel Band or your Fitbit or your Jawbone Up, that tells you how much activity, but it doesn't tell you what you're eating and are you being healthy. This doesn't tell you about what you eat. Maybe a smart plate comes later, but this is a smart cup and it will tell you how much liquid you drink each day. But it's even smarter than that. It can analyze the content of your drink. It knows the difference between Coke and Pepsi. It can tell if you're drinking beer, orange juice, coffee, tea. So you can imagine a world where you have that if you really want to be healthy and you set some alerts to say, look, I want to cut down on my coffee. After your third cup of coffee, it gives you an alert to say, hey, you've already had 3 today. Maybe you should have some water. Or you could apply that to beer or whatever else. Maybe you want to cut down on the high sugar content drinks. So you can use this smart cup, which connects to your phone, to give you information. Another application of sensors, and I'll talk about the Internet of Things. This is one of the many, many examples. What's driving these things? Gartner has this term called the nexus of forces. We've been talking about it for more than 4 years now. And nexus is an unusual English word that means the combination, the coming together of these different elements. Each one is significant. Mobile, the trend towards mobile, the rise of social media, cloud computing as a platform, and information or big data or analytics. These are all significant, but when they come together, they create a new opportunity. When you add to that the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Everything, we start to connect the physical world with this virtual world of cloud and mobile and social, etc. And that's where we see really the big mega trend in the future is this notion of a digital business, which from Gartner's point of view, as we have studied and observed this, a digital business is one that creates new business designs, new business models, new products that blur the boundary between the physical world, the room that we're sitting in, and the virtual world, the online world, the mobile apps. It does that by connecting people, businesses, and things. Prior to the emergence of the Internet of Things, it was mainly people interacting with businesses. And before e-commerce, we had the internet, was mainly people interacting with each other or sharing information online. Then we connected our businesses and said we can sell stuff. Now we're connecting the physical world. So my Volvo car could potentially have a sensor in it in the future, in the tyre, that detects when the tyre goes flat. If it's losing air pressure, and maybe instead of telling me, it's smart enough to say, well, I'm going to find if there's a garage near where I am. I know which route I'm on because I talk to the GPS system, and there's 3 garages within the next kilometre. I'm going to send them a message to see if they can repair this leaking tyre for me. And our car, the physical item, connects virtually to the e-business environment to negotiate and arrange a repair before we have an accident. That's what we mean by blurring the boundaries of physical and digital and virtual. GE is a well-known industrial company, very successful. They refer to the industrial internet, which is their way of talking about the Internet of Things, and the ability to marry real-time customer data with real-time performance of their products. That's the holy grail of our business, and that's really what a digital business is about. So the Internet of Things, I'm sure you've all heard the term, you read it in the media regularly. Let me give you some numbers. Go back 5 years or so. Gartner estimated that there were about 1.6 billion personal devices, smartphones, tablets, things that people use to access the internet. And there were less than 1 billion things that directly connected to the internet, machinery, appliances, whatever. If you go forward 5 years, our estimates are that flips around dramatically. So the personal devices grow. So it's good news for companies like True. Growth in mobile devices, connecting to the internet, data services, that will be huge. 7.3 billion devices by 2020. That's roughly the population of the planet. Now, if you're like me, you have 2 or 3 devices, so that means there's still some people missing out. But on average, 1 device per person. But the bigger number now is the Internet of Things, the connected devices, sensors, cameras, machinery, cars, Fitbits, smart cups, refrigerator, washing machine. And we see that exploding in growth. That's why it's such an exciting trend. Here's a few examples, just to try to bring that to life for you. There's many different applications. From medical, fitness, monitoring your health. It can go beyond the Fitbit to maybe machines that monitor blood sugar levels if you're a diabetic, and then can connect that to your doctor and send alerts. Smart pills that you take and actually can send messages from inside your body about what's going on or how the drug is reacting and treating a condition. It can be cars, it can be rubbish bins that tell you when they're full. Many different things that can have sensors. Even the chair you're sitting in could tell you that you've been sitting down for too long, it's time for a break. In the home, it can be our entertainment, it can be home security, it can be watering the garden, it can be wearable clothes, many different things. So then, building on this nexus of forces, the Internet of Things, this era of digital business, we've also identified what we call post-nexus trends. 5 other trends to be paying attention to. As William Gibson said, the future's already here, so there's already evidence of these things, but let me briefly describe them for you. Smart, S-M-A-R-T. S is for sensor networks. That's basically the Internet of Things. That's sensors that connect either directly or indirectly to the network, internet or other networks. Jet engines, GE, Rolls-Royce are all making the next generation of jet engines with a much increased number of sensors, monitoring the temperature, the speed, the fuel consumption, any performance issues in flight, in real time, and monitoring that. So that when the aircraft lands, they already know what maintenance may be required. There's applications in agriculture, which I don't have time to go into, but many, many different industries will be affected by this. Sensor networks. M is for maker machines. That's what people call 3D printing. Machines that make things. It's often called additive manufacturing because they're making it from nothing, Previous manufacturing, you started with a block of material, metal, and then you take away the bits you don't want by a lathe or some other process. Airbus have been developing 3D printing for some aircraft components. For example, some of the hinges on the doors. They can create a lighter, cheaper product, and 3D printing allows them to do small batches. They don't have to tool up a factory to do a few thousand. They can do maybe a few dozen at a time. Many different applications, industrial, consumer, medical. There are cases where people have printed 3D human organs with biological material, working kidneys, for example. That's kind of a bit scary for me, but this is what it's about. So machines that can make things. If you link that back to the jet aircraft, when I was here in Bangkok, I think 2 months ago, there was a story in the Bangkok Post about an Australian university that had built a 3D jet engine, a fully functioned thing on a 3D printer. Not a model, an actual working jet engine made of high quality metal through what we call 3D printing. And it was about, I think about that long, a little over a metre in size, and it was a working jet aircraft engine, fully made from a 3D printer. Human augmentation. Now that might be things we wear. You will have heard of Google Glass, maybe smart gloves that can give you extra sense or strength. Exoskeletons, if you're a manufacturing job and you need extra strength in construction or something. Or it could be implants, replacing functionality for someone who's lost their sight. So there's lots of applications here of human augmentation. And robotics. R is for robotics. Robots are becoming incredibly cheap. They used to be quite dumb in industrial sense. They were programmed, to weld parts on a car, and they're actually quite dangerous because they had no awareness. The new robots are aware. If there are humans around, they'll be careful. They're becoming incredibly smart. The one at the top is called Baxter, the red one. You can program it, you can teach it to do things by moving its arms, and it only costs about 20,000 US. Many different robotics. And the autonomous vehicles is one example of that I'll come back to. The last one, the T in smart, is thinking machines. Perhaps the best example of this is IBM's Watson. It's a computer that learns. It's not programmed to follow, the same path. You feed it data and it looks for patterns and it learns. It's being used in law enforcement, in financial services to detect fraud and money laundering. Pharma companies are looking at drug discovery, many different ones. At the consumer end, there's the likes of Siri, if you have an Apple iPhone and similar technologies, where you ask it questions and it will respond not from a pre-programmed menu, but it will respond in a contextual, dynamic way. I don't have time to go all through these, but there are some issues that come out of this, good and bad. Who's liable if the machine makes a bad decision? If your self-driving car crashes, is that your fault if you're in the car? Is it the car manufacturer? Is it the provider of the platform? Many different issues. But they're very interesting because they're early stage and they will disrupt many industries. Let me give you a quick example. Self-driving car. You may have heard of Google's pilots and other companies as well. The examples I use are just to illustrate. I'm not promoting any particular company here. But Google has a self-driving car, a number of them. They've driven over 300,000 miles on public roads in the US. Only 2 accidents. The first was when somebody ran into the back of the car, so it's not the car's fault. The second, when the driver, you have to have a driver even if they're not doing anything, when the driver switched off the automatic and took over manual control to park the car and had an accident. Self-driving cars. Every car company now has to answer the question, when will we sell a self-driving car? 5 or 10 years ago, they didn't have to answer that question. Why? Because a company that makes search engines called Google has disrupted the auto industry, and they don't even sell cars. So industry blurring. Your next competitor may not be a current competitor. They may come from outside your industry. And we can see some examples of industries disrupted. So time is very short today, and I apologize for rushing through this. As I said, it's a kind of a high-level view around some of the trends. Let me just in the last few minutes touch on some things. So what does this mean for organisations? Gartner has this view that we are entering a third era of technology and IT. The first era is really about when we created technology. And companies used to build their own networks and servers and code their own applications. We moved into a second era where we could buy packaged software for many of our applications. We could buy reliable servers from HP and IBM and Dell. And so we applied technology to industrialize the organization, to automate business processes, to drive efficiency. Technology has moved out of the IT department, and it's everywhere. So we're now in this third era of digitalization. We've digitized before, we've done online transactions. Now we are digitalizing, we're creating new businesses in this digital era where technology is everywhere. And the question now is, what will our business do to take advantage of these new opportunities and threats? It's not, how are we going to use technology to make the business efficient? That still has to be done. But the real question in a digital era is, technology is out there. What are we going to do to engage with it and reinvent our business model? In our CIO surveys that we do, we can see some of the popular areas people are investing money, and we can see that nexus of forces, the analytics, the BI, cloud and mobile are in the top 5. Social doesn't appear here, but it's kind of embedded in some of the other areas as well. As we approach this new era of digitalization, we're moving into some unknowns. We can't predict as easily. And so one of our suggestions to our executives is you need to think about technology investment in at least 3 different categories. The fact-based in the middle is our traditional ROI, where it's predictable, where if I spend 100 baht implementing a automation of a process, I'm going to save 300 baht in labor or some other cost. Or if I invest 100 baht in a new product development, I'm going to make 300 baht from new sales. That's fact-based, where we can be very confident of the numbers. Fear-based, security. Security is pervasive through all this. I didn't list it separately, but it is pervasive. Security, risk, compliance with regulation. You have to do those to maintain your business license, particularly in regulated industries. So it's not a case of saying, well, should we do this or not? We have to do it. How do we do it in a sensible way? And faith-based says, I really believe we should be investing in maybe social listening. I can't do an ROI because I don't know what's going to come out of it. But I really believe we should be doing that. We should be paying attention to our customers. So I'm going to do that in a small way that reduces the risk. I'm not going to spend 10 billion baht on it, but I'll do a small project for a couple of months to see what we can learn and what we should be taking in the next step. It's more exploratory. In this digital era, leadership becomes an important issue. We ask CIOs and CEOs basically the same question. Who really should take a lead around this whole digital agenda, shifting us into this digitalization era? Naturally, the CIOs thought they were the best place. We should be the ones. 47% basically of the leadership should come from CIOs. When we asked CEOs, it was a much more shared view. They definitely gave the most points to the CIO, but it was a much closer distribution. And the message there for us is to say digital leadership is a team sport. We need the CIO, the finance, marketing, product development to be working together in new ways that maybe your business isn't used to collaborate, to identify ideas, to do pilot projects, to develop new products. And one of the challenges, digital means many different things to different people. Okay? When we ask CEOs in our CEO survey, these are some of the words that came out in a word cloud. For many, it's digital marketing. That's where it starts and stops. But we'd suggest that's useful, but digital business is a much broader concept. with much broader opportunities and risks ahead. So part of the challenge of digital leadership is to educate. And if you're here today, I would suggest that you are all leaders. You're all interested in developing yourself, in helping your business understand what's going on and take advantage of the opportunities ahead. So think about, how do you educate? How do you tell stories? How do you engage people in conversations? How do you change the culture to allow us to collaborate in new ways? This is a very simplistic view of a business. We have a head office, a back office, and a front office. In the past, we tended to focus technology in the back office. Let's put in an ERP system, or we'll automate some process. In a digital era, we need to be covering all of them, and particularly the front office, the customer. Customer experience is another topic we could spend a day on. How do we engage and understand and retain and build up a relationship with customers in the front office? How do we manage the analytics about business performance in the head office and shape strategy? So we need to think more holistically about the way technology drives our business. When we look at what CIOs are spending money on, we identified there's really two parts. There's an element of renovating the core, modernising your infrastructure, consolidating applications, modernising core systems. Very familiar. But there's also this new era. How do we develop analytics, particularly predictive analytics? How do we exploit mobile technology and cloud? And we suggest you really need to then think around two approaches. Simplistically, two speeds, but to be honest, it's more than that. It's what we call bimodal IT. A bicycle has two wheels. Bimodal means two modes of operating. One is traditional, where we live in a very predictable world and we're fairly confident of what's happening. The other is this non-linear, where we're exploring, where we're trying to invent new value. And we call it a non-linear, or mode 2, where we're experimenting, where we're partnering between technology, business, finance people to create new value. Trying to do that in the same team doesn't work. So we have a lot of detail around this that I don't have time to go into, but I just want to plant that seed. Think about, how do you create teams that can do this exploration, are tolerant of risk, but we keep tight controls around not going crazy. And we still need the traditional, reliable, secure, scalable. The final point, and time's nearly up, this also impacts our relationship with vendors. We have established vendors that we're all familiar with if you're in the technology world, but there's disruptive vendors. Now, these are the big ones that we know about. There's also a lot of small startups. Now, to be fair to the established ones, they're all reinventing themselves. They're all deploying cloud versions of their products. So they're not just sitting by letting the others come and eat their lunch. They're very actively reinventing themselves, but there is a shift in the market. Our CIOs tell us, this isn't Gartner, this is what the CIOs say, the influence of vendors in the future will change. The traditional large vendors will have less importance to them, and then some of these new emerging ones, and in fact ones we don't even know of yet, will become important in the future. Now, as I say, the traditional vendors are trying to change that, reinvent themselves so this doesn't happen. And let me finish. If you have young children, you've probably been to the beach, Hua Hin or Pattaya or maybe Phuket, and you see the young children playing in the sand, building a sandcastle, and they like to be down near the edge of the water. But they're so busy building their sandcastle that they don't notice the tide starting to come in. Each wave gets a little bit higher up the beach. Eventually, one of the waves comes and washes over their sandcastle, and they're shocked. They run up to you, "Daddy, Daddy, the wave broke my sandcastle." Don't be like that when it comes to digital business. The waves are coming. There's evidence of the change coming. Don't wait till it washes over you. Think about how you can start to pay attention to these trends. Maybe do some small pilots, build some partnerships within your business, build new relationships with niche providers that can provide maybe some solutions, and anticipate so that you ride the wave rather than be washed away by it. With that, There's lots of Gartner resources. If you happen to be a client, please access. If you're not a client, we'd be happy to fix that as well. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. I hope that's useful. I hope that has inspired, educated, and extended your thinking, and that you'll have some actionable things to go away back to the office tomorrow and start to take advantage of the next wave of digital business. Thank you very much. Kapkan Nakrop.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Jonathan Krause, Executive Partner นะครับจากทาง Gartner Advisory สิงคโปร์นั่นเองนะครับเอาละครับนี่คือเทรนด์นะครับที่เริ่มต้นขึ้นโดยการแนะนำ Product ต่างๆที่เราน่าจะเห็นภาพตามกันได้ตั้งแต่สิ่งเล็กๆรวมไปถึงสิ่งที่อยู่รอบตัวเรานะครับยาวมาถึงเรื่องราวของความเสี่ยงที่วันนี้เชื่อว่าหลายๆท่านที่อยู่ตรงนี้นะครับบางคนก็ถือตัวธุรกิจนั้นเอาไว้ครับบางคนกังวลว่าจะก้าวมันต่อไปอย่างไรบางคนกำลังลังเลว่าจะลงทุนมากน้อยแค่ไหนแต่สิ่งที่โจนาธานได้กล่าวไว้ก็คือว่าค่อยๆครับค่อยๆทำค่อยๆเริ่มต้นค่อยๆนำเอาสิ่งที่เรามั่นใจสิ่งที่เรารู้อย่าไปลงทุนล่วงหน้าเกินกว่าสิ่งที่เรารู้ถ้าเรารู้และเราทำนั่นคือสิ่งที่กำลังจะก้าวตามมาคือผลประกอบการที่ดียิ่งขึ้นนะครับรวมไปถึงความสนใจไม่ใช่แค่เฉพาะใครที่ชักชวนเรามาดูแต่เรามองแล้วเราสามารถต่อยอดสิ่งเหล่านั้นได้อย่างไรนี่คือสิ่งที่ทางโจนาธาน คราวส์ได้เล่าให้เราฟังนั่นเองนะครับ